Two professional snipers, 800 meters apart, focused on killing each other. Kyle knew where his enemy was, but the enemy also knew Kyle's position. The next shot would be someone's last shot. The scorching afternoon sun cast harsh shadows across the abandoned buildings of Ramadi as Staff Sergeant Kyle maintained his position behind a partially collapsed concrete wall. For the past 6 hours, he'd been locked in a deadly game of patience with an enemy sniper whose skills matched his own. This wasn't a routine engagement, this was personal. 3 days earlier, the enemy sniper had killed Petty Officer Second Class Danny Rodriguez, Kyle's spotter and close friend. The shot had been perfect, a single round through Rodriguez's head from an estimated 600 meters while he was providing overwatch for a Marine patrol. The precision and timing suggested they were dealing with a professional, not just another insurgent with a rifle. Now Kyle found himself in the most dangerous position a sniper could face, being hunted by someone who understood his methods, his thinking, and his capabilities. Through his Schmidt and Bender scope, Kyle studied the building where he knew his enemy waited. The structure was a 3-story apartment complex, partially destroyed by previous fighting, offering dozens of potential shooting positions with excellent fields of fire. Overwatch, this is ground. Status report. The radio crackled with the voice of Captain Mike Harrison, the Marine Company commander who'd been coordinating with Kyle's SEAL team. Ground, Overwatch. Still have eyes on the target building. No movement detected, but he's definitely in there. Kyle's voice was barely above a whisper. Sound discipline was critical when dealing with an opponent who might be using acoustic equipment to triangulate his position. Kyle knew the enemy sniper's general location, a window on the second floor of the apartment building, approximately 800 meters northeast of his position. What he didn't know was the exact room, the precise angle, or most critically, when his opponent would decide to take the shot that would end this standoff. But here's what made this situation uniquely dangerous. Kyle had been forced to reveal his approximate position earlier in the day. While providing overwatch for a Marine patrol, he'd eliminated 2 insurgents who were preparing to ambush American forces. The muzzle flash and sound signature from his Macmillan TAC-338 had given away his general area to anyone with the skill to analyze the ballistic data. The enemy sniper had immediately responded by taking a shot at Kyle's position. The round had missed by inches, striking the concrete barrier just above Kyle's head and showering him with debris. The precision of the shot told Kyle everything he needed to know. He was dealing with a highly trained marksman who understood long-range ballistics, wind compensation, and tactical positioning. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb, Kyle's current spotter, lay motionless beside him with high-powered binoculars trained on the target building. Webb had replaced Rodriguez just 2 days earlier and was still adjusting to Kyle's methodical approach to precision shooting. "I've got movement," Webb whispered. "Third window from the left, second floor." Just a shadow, but something shifted. Kyle adjusted his scope's focus, studying the window Webb had identified. The afternoon sun was creating deep shadows inside the building, making visual confirmation extremely difficult. But Kyle's experience told him that Webb was probably correct. The enemy was repositioning, possibly preparing for a shot. The tactical situation was unlike anything Kyle had faced in his military career. Most sniper engagements involved concealed shooters engaging unsuspecting targets at extended ranges. This was different. Both snipers knew the other's approximate position. Both understood they were in a life-or-death competition where superior skill and patience would determine the outcome. Kyle's breathing slowed to the controlled rhythm that enabled precision shooting under extreme stress. His heart rate dropped to the minimal level that eliminated microscopic movements that could affect accuracy. But his mind was racing through tactical options, trying to gain any advantage that might tip the scales in his favor. The mathematical challenge was staggering. At 800 meters, Kyle would need to account for bullet drop of approximately 180 inches, wind drift that could vary significantly between his position and the target, and atmospheric conditions that would affect ballistic performance. But his opponent faced identical challenges, and Kyle suspected the enemy's equipment and training were comparable to his own. "Chief, what's your assessment of atmospheric conditions?" Kyle asked, seeking any environmental factor that might provide an advantage. Webb checked his portable meteorological equipment. Wind speed 8 to 12 miles per hour, variable from the northwest. Temperature 104 degrees, humidity 23%. Barometric pressure steady at 29.87. Conditions are actually pretty good for long-range shooting. Unfortunately, good conditions for Kyle meant equally good conditions for his opponent. The weather wouldn't provide any tactical advantage. This engagement would be decided by skill, patience, and possibly luck. Kyle studied the target building methodically, noting every detail that might reveal his opponent's exact position. The structure showed obvious battle damage from previous fighting, walls pocked with bullet holes, windows blown out by explosions, concrete barriers erected by insurgents seeking cover from American forces. But the enemy sniper had chosen his position carefully. The second floor provided elevation advantage while remaining low enough to avoid being silhouetted against the sky. The depth of the rooms offered concealment from multiple angles, and the building's layout provided several escape routes if rapid withdrawal became necessary. Movement again, Webb reported. Same window, but I think he's adjusting his position. Kyle's finger moved to his trigger guard as he studied the target area. Through his scope, he could detect subtle changes in the shadows, suggesting that someone was indeed repositioning inside the building. But without a clear target, any shot would be speculative, potentially revealing his exact position without achieving a hit. The psychological pressure was immense. Kyle understood that his opponent was probably studying his position with equal intensity, waiting for any movement or muzzle flash that would provide a clear shot. One mistake, one moment of impatience or tactical error, would be fatal. But Kyle had advantages that his enemy might not appreciate. His training with Navy SEALs had emphasized patience and psychological resilience under extreme stress. He'd learned to control anxiety, manage adrenaline, and maintain focus during extended periods of high-stakes waiting. These skills were now being tested at the highest level. "Chief, how long can we maintain this position?" Kyle asked, understanding that time might be a critical factor in the engagement. Webb considered the question carefully. "We've got water for maybe 6 more hours in this heat. After that, dehydration becomes a real issue. But the Marines are providing security on our flanks, so we're not under immediate pressure to relocate." Kyle nodded, filing away this information. The enemy sniper faced similar time constraints, but might have better access to water and shelter inside the building. Endurance could become a deciding factor if the standoff continued into the evening. Through his scope, Kyle began analyzing the ballistic challenges of engaging targets inside the building. The concrete structure would provide significant protection, but the windows remained vulnerable. A precise shot through the right window at the correct angle could eliminate his opponent if Kyle could determine the exact room and shooting position. "I'm seeing consistent shadow movement in that same window," Webb observed. "Whatever's in there is staying active. Could be our guy adjusting his scope, or maybe just checking different angles." Kyle made a tactical decision that would define the remainder of the engagement. Instead of continuing to wait for a clear shot, he would attempt to force his opponent into a tactical error by creating controlled movement that might draw enemy fire. "Chief, I'm going to try something. When I give the signal, I want you to move that helmet on the stick just visible above our position. Just for a second, then pull it back down." Webb understood immediately. Kyle was planning to use a decoy to determine his opponent's exact position and capabilities. If the enemy sniper took the bait, his muzzle flash would reveal his location for Kyle's immediate response. "Roger that. But if this guy's as good as we think, he might not fall for basic deception." "Maybe not, but we need to do something. This standoff could continue for hours, and eventually one of us is going to make a mistake. I'd rather control when that happens." Kyle positioned himself for the fastest possible target acquisition and engagement. His rifle was already zeroed for 800 meters, his scope adjusted for current atmospheric conditions, and his shooting position optimized for immediate response to any target that appeared. "Ready when you are," Webb whispered, holding the helmet-mounted decoy just below the concrete barrier. Kyle controlled his breathing and prepared for the sequence that would either end the engagement or escalate it to a new level of lethality. "Execute." Webb raised the helmet decoy for exactly 2 seconds, making it visible to anyone observing their position from the target building. Then he immediately pulled it down and rolled away from that location. The enemy response was immediate and devastating. A single rifle shot cracked across the urban landscape, and the helmet decoy exploded in a shower of Kevlar fragments and metal. The shot had been perfectly placed exactly where a sniper's head would have been if the decoy had been real. But the muzzle flash had also revealed the enemy sniper's exact position: third window from the left, second floor, approximately 6 feet back from the window opening to minimize his own visibility. Kyle was already acquiring the target as the echo of the enemy shot faded. Through his scope, he could see a slight movement in the shadows of the identified window. His opponent was probably working the bolt of his rifle, chambering another round and preparing for a follow-up shot. The range was 847 meters according to Kyle's laser rangefinder. Wind speed had increased slightly to 14 miles per hour from the northwest. Atmospheric conditions remained stable. Kyle made microscopic adjustments to his scope settings, accounting for the precise range and environmental factors. His breathing reached the perfect rhythm. His heart rate dropped to the minimal level that enabled supernatural accuracy. His finger found the trigger with the gentle pressure that had become second nature through thousands of hours of practice. Through the scope, Kyle could see his opponent's position clearly now. The enemy sniper was positioned behind a makeshift rest constructed from concrete blocks, his rifle barely visible in the window opening. Kyle estimated the target's head would be approximately 18 inches behind the rifle scope. Kyle's crosshairs settled on the precise point where his opponent's head should be located. The mathematical calculations ran through his mind automatically. 847 meters range, 14 miles per hour northwest wind requiring 2.1 MOA left compensation, bullet drop requiring 22.3 MOA elevation, flight time 1.1 seconds. But just as Kyle began his final trigger squeeze, the enemy sniper moved. Through his scope, Kyle watched his opponent shift position slightly, apparently adjusting his own scope settings or repositioning for a better angle. The movement saved the enemy sniper's life. Kyle's shot, fired with perfect technical precision, struck the concrete window frame exactly where his opponent's head had been located 1 second earlier. The impact sent fragments of concrete and metal ricocheting through the room. The enemy sniper's response was immediate and professional. Instead of panicking or exposing himself by moving rapidly, he remained in position and returned fire within 15 seconds of Kyle's shot. Kyle heard the bullet's supersonic crack as it passed within inches of his head, followed by the impact against the concrete wall behind his position. The enemy's return shot had been equally precise, missing only because Kyle had instinctively shifted position after firing his own round. "Jesus Christ," Webb whispered. "That was too close. This guy's definitely professional military." Kyle was already chambering another round and repositioning for a follow-up shot. The exchange had confirmed what he'd suspected: his opponent possessed skills and equipment comparable to his own. This engagement would be decided by tactical thinking and split-second execution rather than superior marksmanship. "Chief, I need you to watch for any movement in adjacent windows. If this guy's smart, he'll relocate after taking that shot." Webb immediately began scanning the building with his binoculars, searching for any indication that the enemy sniper was changing positions. Professional snipers were trained never to fire more than 1 or 2 shots from the same location before moving to an alternate position. "I've got movement," Webb reported. 2 windows to the right of his original position. "Something's definitely moving in there." Kyle shifted his scope to the new location, confirming Webb's observation. The enemy sniper had indeed relocated, demonstrating tactical awareness and battlefield discipline that confirmed his professional training. The new position offered the enemy several advantages: a slightly different angle of fire that would require Kyle to adjust his own position, better concealment from the afternoon sun, and an escape route toward the building's rear stairwell. Kyle realized that his opponent was thinking tactically rather than just technically. This wasn't simply a marksmanship competition, it was a comprehensive test of field craft, tactical decision-making, and psychological endurance under extreme pressure. "Range to the new position?" Kyle asked, already making calculations for the different shooting angle. Webb consulted his rangefinder. 863 meters, bearing northeast 47 degrees. Wind conditions haven't changed significantly. Kyle adjusted his scope for the new range and angle, understanding that each repositioning created opportunities for tactical errors by both shooters. The enemy's movement had provided Kyle with information about his opponent's location, but it had also given the enemy a new perspective on Kyle's position. Through his scope, Kyle studied the new window carefully. The enemy sniper was being more cautious now, remaining deeper in the room and exposing less of his position to observation. Kyle could detect slight movements in the shadows, but nothing that provided a clear shot. The afternoon was growing later, and the angle of sunlight was beginning to change the tactical situation. Shadows were shifting, atmospheric conditions were fluctuating with temperature changes, and both snipers were dealing with fatigue from hours of sustained concentration. Kyle understood that time pressure was beginning to favor his opponent. The enemy sniper was fighting on familiar terrain, probably had better access to water and supplies, and might be receiving support from other insurgent forces in the area. "Chief, we need to end this engagement before conditions deteriorate further." This guy's not going to make any obvious mistakes, so we need to create opportunities. Webb nodded, understanding that Kyle was preparing for a more aggressive approach. What do you have in mind? Kyle outlined his plan quickly. Instead of continuing the passive standoff, he would use coordinated movement and deception to force the enemy into a tactical response that would provide a clear shot opportunity. The plan required precise timing and carried significant risk. If executed correctly, it would end the engagement decisively. If it failed, Kyle would be exposed to enemy fire with limited cover and escape options. On my signal, I want you to create movement at our original position while I relocate to the alternate shooting point we identified earlier. When he takes the shot at the decoy position, I'll have him from a different angle. Webb understood the tactical logic, but also the risks involved. Roger that. But remember, if this guy doesn't take the bait, you'll be caught in the open during your movement. Kyle had already considered this possibility. It's a calculated risk. But we can't maintain this standoff indefinitely, and every minute we wait gives him more advantages. Kyle began preparing for the most dangerous movement of his military career. He would need to relocate approximately 50 meters to reach the alternate position, crossing open ground that would expose him to enemy observation and fire. The movement would take approximately 30 seconds, during which he would be completely vulnerable. But the alternate position would provide a significantly better angle on the enemy's current location, potentially allowing Kyle to engage targets that were concealed from his current position. Execute in 60 seconds, Kyle announced, beginning his final equipment check and mental preparation for the tactical movement that would determine the outcome of this deadly engagement. The next 60 seconds would test every skill Kyle had developed during his military career: tactical thinking under pressure, physical conditioning, marksmanship under stress, and the psychological resilience that separated elite warriors from ordinary soldiers. Kyle's breathing reached perfect control. His heart rate dropped to combat optimal levels. His mind focused completely on the tactical sequence that would either end the engagement successfully or cost him his life. 30 seconds, he whispered to Webb, who was preparing the deception that would hopefully draw enemy fire away from Kyle's movement route. Through his scope, Kyle took one final look at the enemy position, memorizing every detail that might provide advantage during the upcoming engagement. The enemy sniper remained concealed in the shadows, waiting with the same patient lethality that characterized all professional marksmen. Execute. Webb immediately created movement at their original position while Kyle began his sprint toward the alternate shooting location. For the next 30 seconds, everything would depend on speed, precision, and the tactical decisions made by two professional killers who understood that only one of them would survive this encounter. The enemy sniper took the shot exactly as Kyle had predicted, his bullet striking the decoy position with devastating accuracy. But Kyle was already in position at the alternate location, his crosshairs settling on the muzzle flash that had revealed his opponent's exact position. Kyle's shot was perfect. Through his scope, he watched the enemy sniper collapse as the .338 Lapua Magnum round found its mark with mathematical precision. The engagement was over. Target down, Kyle reported, his voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. Threat eliminated. The deadly game of patience between two professional snipers had lasted 7 hours. Kyle's victory had been decided by tactical thinking, superior positioning, and the kind of calculated risk-taking that separated legendary warriors from merely competent ones.
See you in the next videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe.